Welcome to Recaply X, your movie recap in a flash. We bring the drama, the action, and the twists in minutes. Our movie today begins with a man searching through documents belonging to a company called S&M. We learn that this company has been conducting unethical experiments on dogs, altering their natural genes. The problem is that this company has been doing this for many years and has named its project Silence. They managed to turn ordinary dogs into killing machines and are able to control them. We are introduced to a young man in Seoul, South Korea, who is standing and talking about the policies he wants to follow in his election campaign. After the meeting, he meets someone who hands him a sealed envelope, telling him it contains money to help treat his daughter. The man is very pleased with the money. Later, he returns home, and we learn that he lives alone with his daughter, Kim. It becomes apparent that they haven't been getting along since her mother passed away, and they are constantly arguing. Young feels that he doesn't know how to deal with her at all. He is thrilled when he hears on the news that his candidate is leading in the polls by a large margin. He goes out with his daughter and they get into the car together. Suddenly, they hear warnings on the radio about a possible fog covering the entire area and advise all drivers to head home and be cautious on the road. Later, they stop at a gas station to refuel the car, and Young notices that the attendant is acting very strangely and unnaturally, which makes him very worried about his daughter. He decides to leave without taking his change. The gas station attendant, Park, runs after him, insisting that he still owes him a lot of money, but Young ignores him. Meanwhile, a famous golfer named Ling arrives at the airport with her assistant, Lee. We learn that they have come to participate in an upcoming competition. They encounter an elderly woman who seems disoriented, and they manage to save her life at the last moment. The woman's husband, Huck, arrives and thanks the girls for helping his wife. As they travel, the road becomes completely blocked, and two employees comment on the dense and unusual fog, saying that in such conditions, it's impossible for anyone to see the road, and many accidents are likely to occur. Kim falls asleep in the car, and Young continues driving. When they reach the bridge, the situation becomes very difficult as visibility drops to almost nothing. Young becomes anxious and starts yelling, prompting Kim to ask him to calm down because she can't sleep. At that moment, a reckless driver starts driving erratically, trying to cross the bridge at any cost, performing dangerous maneuvers and causing chaos. On the same bridge, another man is driving cautiously but is suddenly startled by large trucks filled with soldiers passing by and being told to get off the road quickly. Kim looks out of her window and notices a terrifying, unnatural-looking dog with red eyes next to her. She is shocked by its appearance. Meanwhile, the elderly man and his wife are also on the bridge and notice the reckless driver passing by them, which makes them very worried. As expected, the reckless driver loses control of his car, swerving violently and failing to stop. This forces a bus driver to swerve in the opposite direction to avoid a collision, leading to a chain reaction of accidents. Many vehicles crash into each other, causing injuries and deaths. A massive truck overturns and crashes onto other cars, prompting everyone to flee their vehicles to save themselves. Chaos ensues as people panic, not knowing what to do. The bridge becomes completely blocked, leaving no way out. Ling and her assistant are also caught in the chaos, and even a traffic officer's vehicle is destroyed when he fails to see a bulldozer in front of him. Meanwhile, Park meets with his boss, who scolds him for being negligent at work and demands he pay for the damages he's caused. Suddenly, Park hears the news about the bridge disaster and is shocked. He realizes that Young must be on that bridge since he passed through the same direction earlier. Determined to get his money back, Park decides to head to the bridge. He takes a large truck and sets off. Meanwhile, Young tries to navigate through the disaster and is horrified by the scene in front of him. A military truck passes by him and he wonders what they are doing there. A soldier exits the truck to inspect the cargo and ensure everything is in order. Young accidentally crashes his car into something, causing it to stop in the middle of the road. Kim becomes terrified by the unfolding events, especially after seeing an overturned car with injured passengers. She attempts to get out to help them, but her father insists she stay in the car and promises to help them himself. As Young exits the car, he sees two soldiers pulling a man out of his car. The man turns out to be Dr. Ying, a famous researcher involved in the Silence project. Dr. Ying is injured and the soldiers try to call for help, but their radios are unresponsive. One of the soldiers rushes to check on the cargo, only to discover that the truck's door is open and the cargo is missing. The officer orders his soldiers to block the entire road and search for the missing cargo. When they examine the truck closely, they find the body of a soldier inside, and they are horrified by the sight. Young helps Dr. Ying to his car and tries to call someone on his phone, but he suddenly loses signal. He realizes that the soldiers have jammed the signal for some unknown reason, making him even more anxious. At the same time, everyone else notices the lack of signal and becomes extremely frightened. Young is shocked to find that his daughter is no longer in the car. He starts screaming her name loudly, calling out for her. Kim, meanwhile, walks a little further and notices a strange creature nearby. She realizes it's the same dog she saw earlier in the car. She's puzzled by its behavior as it violently bangs its head against the bridge. Kim tries to understand why the dog is behaving this way. Unfortunately, she isn't too scared and decides to approach it. She even offers it some biscuits. It becomes clear that the dog he wants to attack her. He keeps staring at her, remains very calm, starts to feel safe around her, and approaches to eat the biscuit. As soon as her father arrives, the dog gets scared and quickly runs away, disappearing into the fog. At this point, more dogs like him appear among the people, trying to get close to them. Soldiers arrive to meet Young and instruct him to follow the protocol, telling him there's very little time left before the plane arrives. Young overhears part of their conversation, but doesn't understand anything, so he tries to get more information by asking them what type of plane could fly in such weather and why it would even take off. He also requests that they restore phone signals, assuring them he understands everything. They are forced to tie him up in his car to continue their work. At that moment, Park arrives with his dog, searching for Young. A soldier wears protective gear and orders Dr. Ying to begin the operation. Ling presses a button, and suddenly the dogs become extremely aggressive, running at an incredible speed. They re-enter the truck from which they emerged and attack the standing soldier, trying to devour him. However, the soldier fights off the dogs thanks to his suit, throwing them back one by one and protecting himself as much as possible. The dog that had been watching Cam stays with her, standing at a distance and not attacking the soldier like the others, maintaining a certain distance. The dog tries to regain its energy to move. At this point, the other dogs re-enter and the soldier manages to lock them back in the truck. At this time, a military plane arrives with a very large cage, which is lowered onto the bridge. Soldiers begin transferring all the dogs into this container, which is then lifted to be taken away by the plane. Suddenly, Ying discovers that one dog is missing and not among the group. He realizes it is still in its place and sends another soldier to retrieve it. When the soldier arrives, he only finds the control chip discarded on the ground, with no trace of the dog. The disaster is that the dog is no longer under their control. We discover that the dog is on top of the container, jumping into the plane's interior, attacking and killing the soldiers. The entire container of dogs falls, and the intelligent dog, with its quick movements, causes the plane to crash and jumps out before it is destroyed. The plane explodes entirely, taking the dogs with it, and part of the bridge collapses. Ying is shocked to learn that the dogs are out of control and doesn't know what to do. The dogs become even more aggressive, acting in terrifying ways, escaping from the container, spreading everywhere, and attacking anyone in their path. People flee, trying to save themselves from death, confused about how the dogs could behave so savagely. The dogs kill a large number of people. Linji tries to protect her sister by all means, using her bat to strike the dog in front of her with all her strength, taking her sister and escaping. Meanwhile, the soldiers attempt to find a solution to the problem, but no one can control the situation. The smart dog manages to kill the soldier who had locked them up, while Park's dog escapes out of fear. Young gets into the car with his daughter, attempting to flee, but the car stalls, leaving him unable to move. Eventually, he manages to escape the predicament, fleeing with his daughter and the doctor to a distant location. Along the way, he encounters Park and his dog. Initially unwilling to take them along, Cam pleads with him, feeling sorry for them, forcing him to brake and stop the car, allowing them to join. Park runs quickly and jumps into the Akuo car trunk at the last moment before the dog catches him. Linji, her sister, and some survivors manage to board a bus, where they also find the old man and his wife. Young stops on the road due to a fire blocking the way, creating a massive wall of flames that completely closes the road. The car breaks down and he can't restart it. Suddenly, one of the monsters jumps in front of them, staring at them menacingly. Meanwhile, the company owner learns about everything that has happened and tries to find a way to save the people with his assistants. However, one assistant tells him it's impossible. They discover a distance of about 70 meters between the bridge and the sea, a significant gap that makes reaching the sea safely to board the ship difficult. Moreover, the ship cannot reach the location quickly due to tides and fog, making it impossible for any plane to arrive. Young and his companions are terrified by the dog on the car, hiding to avoid being noticed. The people on the bus witness everything happening with the car and consider getting off to help. Young blames Dr. Ying, holding him responsible for everything happening, pressuring him to explain exactly what they were doing. Ying reveals everything about the Silence Project, explaining that the dogs are genetically modified and have now turned into monsters. He recounts that these experiments have been conducted since World War II, failing every time until the project finally succeeded. He explains that the chips in their heads make them obey commands. However, now one of the dogs dogs has removed its chip, losing control completely. Additionally, something went wrong with the others due to the fall, and all the chips are no longer connected. Young contacts the company owner using the dead officer's radio, trying to explain the situation clearly. He informs him about a large fuel truck ahead that could explode at any moment. Indeed, the explosion occurs, causing all the dogs to flee, giving them a chance to escape the car and run away. They join the other survivors on the bus, and the driver quickly moves them as far away as possible. Meanwhile, the military truck also overturns, crashing into power cables and causing an even bigger fire than before. The entire bridge shakes and collapses, leaving no one able to escape. The bus stops in the middle of the bridge. We understand that the smart dog is the leader of all the dogs. Young speaks to the people, informing them that he has communicated with the official and that they must follow all instructions precisely to ensure their survival. He assures them that help will arrive very soon. People try to understand why the dogs are behaving this way. Young is forced to lie to them to avoid scaring them further, claiming that a rabies outbreak has caused the dogs to reach this state. He decides to keep everything he knows to himself to avoid further panic and also to prevent anyone from attacking Ying. The government prepares a full military team to go and rescue them. The people on the bridge arrive very quickly and start moving around the area to eliminate the dogs. Young sees their flashlights from inside and tries to communicate with them. The officer asks everyone to get off the bus and assures them there are no dogs nearby and that they must have moved away. However, Young insists on speaking to the person in charge before taking any action. The official tells him they need to get off with the special forces and go back with the buses, assuring them that everything will be resolved. The officer mentions that it will take exactly half an hour to reach a safe place. Everyone gets off and carefully walks among the destroyed cars, feeling cautious and scared. They see numerous corpses scattered on the ground. Young notices a dog passing close by and is shocked. He hides behind a car and tries to alert everyone. Park manages to save him and they continue with the rest of the group on their path. Suddenly, they all hear a sound approaching. The soldiers attempt to search the area again to understand what's happening. The people stop to ensure there's no danger, and the officer reassures them that there's nothing to worry about. Suddenly, all the cars start sounding their alarms, signaling that the dogs are nearby. Due to the fog, visibility is poor, and after a while, the dogs attack the soldiers, eliminating them one by one. This happens because the dogs have been trained to attack soldiers. Meanwhile, Young tries to contact the official, but is also attacked. He manages to fend off a dog as much as he can. Park, hiding under a car, sees him. Park's daughter is also attacked by a dog trying to bite her. When Park's dog makes a noise, it distracts the attacking dog, causing it to leave her and move toward the sound. Young seizes the opportunity to save himself, grabs his daughter, and protects her before another dog attacks. He fights off the surrounding dogs and takes her to find a safe place to hide. They enter the luggage compartment of the bus and lock themselves in. Young asks his daughter to stay put while he goes to retrieve the radio. He successfully reaches it, but unfortunately, it's broken. He gathers some useful items around him and notices people hiding under a car. He follows them and finds Park, Ying, her sister, an elderly man and his wife, and a doctor hiding together. Ying opens a small gap to see what's happening outside. They all regroup on the bus, where Young reveals the whole truth, stating that they are all doomed because no one can control or stop the dogs. Young explains that the dog who had its chip removed is seeking revenge against humans for what was done to them. He devises a plan with the group to save themselves. They step outside again and light fires to improve visibility. Young contacts the official, asking if they can be seen through the cameras. The official responds that visibility is poor due to the fog, but advises them to head toward the airport. Young decides to retrieve his daughter first to escape. Unfortunately, the dogs surround them from all sides. They try to scare the dogs away with fire, which proves effective. Park intensifies the fire to keep the dogs at bay. He and Young manage to eliminate some of the dogs. Young rushes to fetch his daughter, throwing a grenade at the dogs and killing more of them. The group returns to the bus and decides to drive to the location described by the official. Meanwhile, the official discovers that no other rescue teams are coming to save them because the incident would become public, jeopardizing everyone involved, including the new presidential candidate. The official becomes paralyzed, unable to think or assist them. Young and his group reach the airport area, finding it deserted with no rescue team in sight. They try contacting the official, but no one responds. Suddenly, the bridge begins to collapse, shaking the entire area. The dogs stand nearby, waiting for someone to come down so they can attack. The group devises a plan to get rid of the dogs. They open the bus door to lure the dogs inside. The group hides in the luggage compartment and uses a stick to close the bus door, trapping the dogs inside. They monitor everything through the bus cameras. Once all the dogs are inside, the door shuts, but unfortunately, the elderly woman and dies, leaving her husband devastated. He decides to stay behind with her while the rest of the group escapes. While the group flees, the dogs try to open the luggage compartment. The elderly man holds them off as much as he can, allowing the group to escape, but he too is killed in the process. Ying screams and calls for a rescue team, hoping someone might be nearby, but no one comes. The group realizes they have truly been abandoned. Park has a panic attack, and the official hears everything but remains silent, refusing to respond. Young realizes the government has sacrificed them and begins brainstorming ways to save them. Young discusses with the group and decides to place the small dog in the dog cage to lure the other dogs. They trap the dogs and throw them off the broken part of the bridge, eliminating them for good. Ying tries to reactivate the system, hoping it might work. Meanwhile, Young enters the agreed-upon location while his daughter stays with the doctor in Park's truck. Young activates the device and prepares to execute the plan. Everyone performs their assigned roles, and the plan goes as intended. The dogs rush toward the trap. Park tries to save his dog, who gets caught on part of a car. He attempts to free the dog before the bridge collapses, but the leader dog confronts him. Park runs away before being attacked. In the end, the leader dog attacks Ying, who attempts to electrocute it to fend it off. Suddenly, the bridge collapses, and the cage containing the dogs falls. The leader dog sees what's happening and tries to help, holding onto the cage and the bridge. It manages to save the smallest dog, lifting it with all its strength. Kim runs to her father to help, but he warns her to stay back as it's too dangerous. She trips and falls onto the road, where a large vehicle crashes onto her, and all the dogs fall from the bridge. Young keeps holding onto the car door. Kim manages to save herself. She runs to her father. She asks Park to leave the cage in the car, where her father is, to lift it up. And indeed, Park manages to do so in the end, after facing great difficulty. In the end, they reach safety, and the entire bridge collapses. They drive quickly in the car to save themselves. Barely crossing the bridge in the end, they reach the highway, leaving behind total destruction and the war they went through. Finally, they are safe after all the horror they endured. When they reach the end of the road, they find the press standing in front of them. As soon as Young gets out, he punches the official in front of everyone, revealing all the disasters and corruption of the government and everything they went through. In the final scene of the movie, we see the leader dog with the small dog they saved, sitting in a safe place in the middle of the city. At that moment, we realize that the disaster is just about to truly begin, and that's where today's movie ends. Stay tuned for